What if Prince Harry and Meghan Markle did not simply come home but waited until the calendar, the money, and the pressure all pointed to exactly the same month? Because the most explosive detail in this entire return is not the suitcase, the house, or even the royal family. It is the timing. A tax advisor looked at August 2026 and reportedly used one word: immaculate. Not beautiful, not sentimental. Immaculate. 6 complete United Kingdom tax years outside the country, followed by a return only months into the 7th. And suddenly, what looked like a family homecoming starts looking like something far more calculated. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle left Britain in March 2020, just weeks before the United Kingdom tax year closed on April 5. Then came 6 complete tax years abroad: April 2021, April 2022, April 2023, April 2024, April 2025, and finally, April 2026. The 6th year was finished. The clock had effectively done its job. Then, in August 2026, they came back. Not 5 years, not 5.5, 6 complete years, followed by a return several months into the next tax year. If that timing means nothing, it is an extraordinary coincidence. But if it was planned, the calendar suddenly becomes one of the biggest clues in the entire Sussex story. And this is where the official explanation begins to wobble. The public was given a warm, almost cinematic reason. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle supposedly wanted to be closer to King Charles III while their children, Prince Archie and Princess Liette, could finally build relationships with their royal cousins. Beautiful words, family words, emotional words. But then someone did something extremely inconvenient. They counted. How many meetings had Prince Harry actually had with his father across those 6 years? 3. How many times had King Charles seen his grandchildren? Twice. Twice in 6 years. Suddenly, the explanation starts looking less like a family reunion and more like a press release narrative carefully designed to make an uncomfortable return sound sentimental. And then comes the question nobody seems eager to answer. Which family are we talking about? Lord Spencer, Harry's uncle on his mother's side, hardly represents some picture-perfect extended family reunion. On the Windsor side, the cousins are not exactly a ready-made playgroup for Archie and Liette. So when the Sussex camp says the children need family, the obvious question becomes painfully simple. Which family? That question gets even louder when the July meeting between Harry and Charles is examined. No grand photograph, no sweeping palace announcement, no emotional reunion stage for the cameras. Yet 2 newspapers reportedly carried the story in the same hour, both presenting it as a world exclusive. 2 exclusives, same hour. That does not look like an accidental family conversation leaking into the press. It looks like information being distributed. And then there is the Sussex communications history, where things get even messier. Their team has denied involvement in stories that later appeared to originate from their own side. There were disputed claims surrounding a famous American family. There was the extraordinary claim that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had effectively married privately 3 days before their public wedding, a claim later challenged by a senior member of the clergy because such a ceremony would have raised serious legal problems. So when the same machinery now tells the public exactly why they are returning, skepticism is not outrageous. It is inevitable, because not long ago, the message from Harry's camp was completely different. He was reportedly happier than ever in California. He was learning to surf. He loved his life in Montecito. Britain was supposedly behind him. Then, suddenly, the story changed. Now, Britain is home again. A source claiming connections to aristocratic and intelligence-adjacent circles said information had been held since August 12, 2026, 8 days of silence. Then came a specific allegation involving United States federal authorities and paperwork Prince Harry had submitted around 2021 concerning his immigration status. The claim was that investigators believed he had misrepresented something material on that paperwork and that the situation had become serious enough to create pressure for him to leave. Now stop there. That allegation remains exactly that, an allegation. It is not established fact, but the reason it has exploded is the specificity. A date, a sequence, a period of silence. And then the most dramatic claim of all, if Prince Harry did not jump, he could be pushed. That would transform this from a royal family story into an international legal and immigration drama. But there is a contradiction hiding in plain sight. Another account suggested Prince Harry had been planning the British return for months. A friend reportedly knew in the spring that he was considering properties in the Cotswolds near Highgrove, the area associated with his childhood. If that is true, then this was not simply an emergency escape. Unless both stories are true. Unless the destination was planned months ago while the deadline suddenly moved closer. And that possibility changes everything. Imagine planning a move for financial reasons, watching the calendar, waiting for the right moment, and then suddenly receiving a completely different different kind of pressure. The destination remains the same. The urgency changes. Then comes the money. A royal broadcaster described the California experiment in brutally simple terms: broke and busted. The argument was that the great commercial rescue never materialized. The Daily Mail legal battle collapsed. The enormous damages some expected never arrived. And the timing became especially suspicious because the financial consequences of that lost case were reportedly approaching immediately after the homecoming announcement. And this is where the return stops looking like a simple change of postcode and starts looking like a potential financial and security strategy. For 6 years, Prince Harry fought through the courts for government-funded protection in Britain, arguing that his security arrangements should be restored. Yet one of the central obstacles was brutally simple: he was no longer living in the United Kingdom and was no longer a working royal. Change those two variables and suddenly the entire equation changes. If Prince Harry lives in Britain and eventually receives even a modest official role connected to the royal family, the question of state protection becomes dramatically different. One patronage, one ceremonial appointment, one carefully worded palace announcement. Suddenly, the security burden that had been draining millions from private finances could potentially become a public expense. That is the part that makes this return so fascinating. The alleged private security bill has been estimated at roughly £3 to £4 million a year. That is not a one-off payment. That is an annual financial drain. Every year, another enormous sum disappears simply to maintain protection. But if circumstances changed and Prince Harry became eligible for protection through an official role, that expense could move from his own finances toward the state security apparatus. And that is why the palace wording matters so much. The official position has emphasized that there will be no change to the Duke and Duchess status as private individuals and non-working royals. But another line has left the door slightly less firmly closed, suggesting that any future role would need to be discussed directly between Prince Harry and his father. That word, him, suddenly becomes extremely interesting because there is another possibility nobody wants to photograph yet. Prince Harry could potentially receive a role without Meghan Markle receiving the same status. That would create an extraordinary arrangement. Harry back inside the machinery of royal duty while Meghan remains outside it. The protection question would then become separate from the family question. And suddenly, the return would not necessarily mean a restoration of the Sussexes as a team. It could mean the gradual rehabilitation of one member of the pair. The former head of the Royal Protection Command reportedly viewed the return as a dramatic U-turn. After years of arguments that Britain was too dangerous for Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and their children, they were now apparently considering establishing their lives here again. The contradiction is impossible to miss. The same country described as unsafe is suddenly suitable for a family home. The same streets once portrayed as threatening are now where they want to raise Prince Archie and Princess Liette. And then comes the security register. More than 1,000 fixated individuals are reportedly monitored in Britain, with a significant proportion assessed as presenting genuine risks. That means any renewed royal presence creates a real operational question. Homes need assessment. Schools need assessment. Routes need planning. Emergency procedures need preparation. A move of this magnitude cannot simply happen because somebody wakes up on Sunday and decides they fancy the Cotswolds. That is why the claim that King Charles only learned about the return at the last possible moment has attracted so much skepticism. Security professionals would have needed information well before the public announcement. Property arrangements, school placements, transport, threat assessments, and contingency plans do not materialize overnight. Somewhere, someone was preparing. And then there is the monarchy itself. King Charles III may welcome greater contact with his son, but Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, occupy a completely different constitutional position. If Prince Harry returns under the personal blessing of his father while remaining deeply estranged from the heir, the family fracture becomes institutional rather than merely emotional. The sovereign and the future sovereign cannot easily appear to speak with two different voices on the same issue without consequences. That is where Meghan Markle's presence becomes particularly explosive. If she appears at a formal royal event, established protocol could require her to acknowledge senior royals in ways that would produce an extraordinary photograph. After years of accusations, interviews, documentaries, and public confrontations, imagine the image: Meghan Markle facing Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, in a formal setting, with cameras watching every movement. One gesture could become a global global headline. One expression could become a week of television coverage, and the newspapers would make fortunes from it. But beneath the spectacle sits the bigger calculation. The tax threshold has already passed. The financial pressure is mounting. The security question remains unresolved. The alleged American immigration controversy adds another layer of urgency, and the British address potentially connects all three stories. That is why August 2026 feels less like an emotional homecoming and more like the final square on a chessboard that has been moving for years. The tax clock reached its destination. The commercial empire weakened. The legal pressure intensified. The security problem remained expensive. And suddenly, Britain became useful again. Or maybe the most uncomfortable possibility is the simplest one. They waited until returning finally made financial, legal, and strategic sense. The world is now waiting for the first photograph of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle back on British soil. And when that picture arrives, everyone will look at their faces.